Hello, and welcome to this week's episode of the Purely Flowing podcast. I'm Adele. I'm founder of Pure Flow State, and we specialize in sustainable brand strategy for purpose led businesses. Now, the name Pure Flow State comes from the concept of flow state, which was coined by an Hungarian American psychologist named Michal Csikszentmihalyi to describe a time where you're so in harmony with the present moment that you enter into a timeless bliss and you could do whatever it is you're doing forever. So we work with brands to help them achieve that, making sure that they've got all the strategies in place to connect them with the right people who need them and who they can make the most impact with. And these sessions are to inspire and share stories about everybody's experience with the flow state and what that means to them, and hopefully bring some flow into everybody's life. And my guest this week is Nic Lonsdale. She is an accountant and founder of Ginger Books. So welcome, Nic. How are you flowing?
Hey. Flowing great today. It's been a great day so far. Thank you for having me on here. I'm really excited for this.
Oh, it's my pleasure. I'm really excited to dig in, especially after what we've just been chatting about before we came into the studio. So what is your experience? What do you know about flow state?
Lots and not so much at the same time. I think with what you do, very much not so much, but in terms of how I recognize how I flow, definitely learnt more about myself, especially in the last year. So my business has been going for just over a year now, but really noticed about flow when I started therapy, right as I started the business, really realizing how I was flowing, how I felt within myself as well. So yeah, about a year I've really got into it a bit more.
Wow. I mean, was that something that came kind of organically, that you started to notice things weren't quite in flow and that's why you sought out some therapy?
Yeah, definitely. I think mental health played a big part in that. It was more like, when you just feel like you're just grinding week after week and never really happy with what you're doing, doing it because everybody around you needs you to, and not because it's for your purpose.
Yeah.
That's really where it was about January time last year I realised that needed to change, and I took the leap into therapy in July, and I definitely find myself more flowing now, finding my routine and really balancing myself back out.
Oh, wow. So it took a time for you to actually, when you noticed when you weren't in flow, to actually go and seek help. And why do you think that was? Why do you think there was such a long time frame before you got some help for it?
Honesty and transparency, I hit a really bad down point, and that's when it triggered, like, I need to do something about this because what's going on now isn't working. But it was as the point I was setting up the business, actually, and I knew if I wanted to succeed and the business to go really well, then I needed to change and get back into a routine, a clear mindset, a better positive energy, really, all in told. And I knew I couldn't do that by myself.
Oh, well, I mean, and I'm sorry to hear that, first of all, that
That's
you've
all
been through
right.
all that,
Fine.
but it's great that you've kind of come to that realization. So obviously, first point is awareness, and then it's actually, starting to work out ways how you can change things and move forward in a different way. But it's so common for business owners and people who are in jobs as well to get to that point where they're burning out, they're just kind of like doing every day, and to actually take the courage to stop and say, hang on a minute, things aren't quite right here, we need to do something about it, and then take action on that. It's a really, really inspiring story, because not everybody does it, and we don't always recognize. And then mindset, and a lot of business owners don't realize this, that they can have all the strategies in the world, they can pay all the money they want to course leaders, to programs, to whatever it is that they're doing, but they haven't got the right mindset, they're not going to succeed. What are your thoughts on that?
Definitely, it takes that inner work in order to break down what's going on. And it's a difficult task. It's not an overnight fix, and it's definitely a journey that I think you go on throughout life. It's not like you get to a point and that journey stops. It's something that you're constantly learning, you're constantly changing, developing. But it's, as you said, that self-awareness first. If you've got that, then you can, I really do believe you can unlock anything. And you've just got to go on the journey and just got to embrace it as you go along.
Yeah, and it's unlocking that potential, isn't it? Because we all have it. We all have potential to do whatever it is that we want to do, but whether we allow ourselves to go there and explore it is another thing, isn't it? And brave people who do, but the dividends are so worth it in every respect, isn't it?
Definitely.
And it's about embracing failure to an extent as well, isn't it? I think business owners all have to embrace failures if they want to proceed, because you're not going to fail the first time and say, okay, well, I'm not going to do that anymore, I'm just going to give up and carry on. But you have to give yourself, and I know in my case this happens frequently, a really good talking to carry on and try again when things haven't worked out so well, because there's so much in our psyche and in the way that we're built as a society and as individuals that give us that sense of shame, that sense of failure, that if things aren't right, we need to ditch it and let's just go and get a job, for example.
But I think it's really good to recognize them feelings and to sit with them feelings as well, and not to just so much brush them off. I think it's great to recognize how you're feeling when you're feeling it. If it is failure, if it's guilt, if it's shame, if it's disappointment, sit with it, but don't dwell on it. And I think that's where the difference really comes from, in reflect and create a plan to be able to fix what you couldn't do, because you've recognized, okay, that hasn't worked, you've failed, you've made a mistake in business, something didn't quite go to plan, but it doesn't mean that you can't change that. And I know it's difficult with reputation when it comes to business, but you can only do what you can. And it does, sit with them feelings, but definitely try and create a path where you can build on that.
I love what you just said about sitting with something and not dwelling on it, because they're two very different things, but there's a very fine line between the two. And I've often been advised, just go away and sit with that for a bit. I mean, what does that even mean? What am I supposed to do? Just sit there, sit with it? No, I think it's letting it be there at the same time as not letting it absorb us and take over completely. Is that your interpretation of it as well?
Yeah, definitely not becoming consumed by it, and just recognizing it. That I mean, it's a valid feeling. Everyone has these types of feelings, and I think if you suppress them, I think that's even more worrying, because I think that's when you get that bottle pop and that breakdown, or something doesn't go right and burnout comes through. I think if you sit with it, realize it, and then build on it, then I think you're definitely going to get yourself into a place much quicker than what you are if you constantly dwell on it, which knocks you back 10 paces.
Yeah. Oh, I love that way of thinking about it. And, it's a shame that we have to kind of sometimes get to the point where we are really at that breaking point to be able to do something about it. But it's often the case, isn't it? If we don't really notice something, or we ignore something for as long as we can until we can't. And then that's when we take action, which sometimes is a little bit too late, because we've wasted time, we've kind of, got too deep into something before we start working our way out of it. But I guess with experience and noticing that, you become better at noticing that again, don't you?
Yeah, definitely. And you can put then a strategy in place where you'd never get to that position again. Oh, I'm so sorry. That's my social media engagement alarm. Apologies about that. I have this a lot with people that come to me about their finances, and they go, I'm in a mess, I've left it to the last minute, and I've got all of this stuff to do and I don't know what to do next. And it is that panic stage and that
Yeah.
panic rush. And I find once they've got it in place and they've got the strategy built out and they know exactly what they're doing now month by month and working through it, it becomes so much easier at a year end, and they never fall back into that same cycle because they're on top of it. Again, it depends on the mindset of the person, but with that nudge from myself where I'm like, stay on top of it. And I think it definitely comes from having the right people around you as well.
Yeah.
And being an entrepreneur or so self-employed or just working by yourself, I think it can be quite a lonely place. So I think we'll go back to a little bit what we were mentioning earlier about being in the wrong mindset.
Yeah.
People around you don't always necessarily understand. And I think I have it with my family. Oh, don't work too hard. Oh, you're working too much.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, I am, because I know where I want to be, where I'm not working too much and I'm living free. And I think business owners as a whole can relate to that in some way or another. And going back to the finances, it's keeping in tune with what's going on and understanding that flow that's going on in your business and having the data and the figures behind it in order to drive that as well. I think it's so important, especially as business owners, to understand what's going on in your business finances. Also your personal finances, don't neglect them either.
Oh, do you know, this is reminding me of so, you know, for our audience, Nic and I are on a NatWest Accelerator program together. That's how we met. And I can remember one workshop that we attended, which was talking about, and I'm sure Nic's going to remember this as well, which was talking about money, cash flow, spreadsheets, and the amount of businesses who raise their hand, and these are experienced business owners that have been doing their business very successfully for a long time, and the amount of business owners that raised their hand and said that they didn't know what their current situation was on a spreadsheet, and they didn't want to look either. And if we're looking at that in a business perspective, then that extends most definitely to a personal perspective as well, isn't it? And you know, the amount of people who don't know what the bottom line is, they don't know what's in their bank account at any given time, and they just keep spending because they're too scared to look. So, Nic, what are your thoughts on this? Do you think that this is like a mindset thing? Do you think it's a culture thing? Do you think it's a society thing? What are your thoughts?
I think it's all three rolled together, if I'm honest. I think as British people, we look at money as a very taboo subject. We don't want to talk about it. We don't want to look at it. And for me, I really notice that stems from two core things, and it's an environmental, so that society, social aspect, who you're around, but also from your childhood as well. So if you were brought up in a household that didn't have a lot of money, wasn't able to spend, and didn't have a lot in general, you tend to be scared of having a lot. Scared of success.
Oh, okay, scared of success. Yeah.
Yes.
That's
that link. And you're then scared when you have got money, you don't quite know how to spend it, or you overspend it. You don't save properly because you've never been taught how to save, and you're not budgeting properly because you've never had any money to budget.
Yeah.
Or your parents, I definitely had it in my household where I learned all the finances stuff from my dad, but he would talk to me a little bit about it, especially when I got older. But as a young one, it was, you don't worry about it. Like but you notice as a child, oh, that person got that for PS5 for Christmas, and I got these pair of trainers from Shoe Zone, for example. Like, that was my life. But we come from a very working house family, like working class family, that we didn't have a lot, and I recognize that. But from people that are born in poverty, they're going to be scared to have a lot of money in their bank account because they don't know what to do with it. But then on the flip side of it, you've got people that have got a lot of money in their family that, again, don't know how to budget because they think everything is just theirs.
It's always there.
Yeah. And I wouldn't say it's so much of a spoil aspect, but maybe a bit of an ignorance aspect. Slightly. I don't want to offend anybody, but truth it is. And it's really difficult to navigate that when you don't know where it stems from. But that's where that inner critic and looking within and being self-aware and understanding where do these issues that I'm having come from. Once you can identify it, you can then work on it. And most business owners weren't really good at what they do in business when they first started. It's been a journey. It's taken time to get to be the expert that you have been, and being able to do that with your finances is just as beautiful as what you've done. And as you mentioned, so many people put their hands up in that NatWest meeting. And I remember looking around stunned. Absolutely stunned. Because for me, it's, imagine if you turn around to a business owner and they go, I don't know what my ideal client is. That's just as bad if you turn around and say, I don't know what my finances are, if you don't know what your turnover is, if you don't know what your profit is, if you don't know what's in your bank account, if you don't have an idea of what sort of tax you should be paying or when your taxes should be paid. It's just as detrimental to the business as not understanding as who you're going to target, in my opinion.
Well, I mean, obviously we've got accountants like yourself who can, organise all like the paying the tax and making sure that we're doing it at the right time. But I think every business owner needs to have an understanding of cash flow, because without cash flow, there's no business. Essentially, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what you do. It doesn't matter how amazing you are at your work. It doesn't matter about your snazzy website. It doesn't matter about all your core values. If you've got no cash flow, you've got no business, essentially. And you're right. Obviously, if you want a successful business, you do need a strategy behind that, and you do need to, understand who your customer is, and you need to, stand out from the competition or understand the competition at the very least. But you also need to know what to charge and when to charge it and what's reasonable, and what happens when the money runs out. And this is something that I come up against quite a lot with businesses, to try and understand something that is intangible, like a brand, because you can't, there are tangible aspects to a brand, but there are lots of intangibles as well. Seeing things as an investment versus a cost, that's another side of mindset, where where a business owner is running around like a headless chicken trying to get everything done, but resistant to spending the money on getting a new team member in. And we talked about this, haven't we? How there's that, I can't spend that. Is that scarcity mindset, that money is finite as well. There's only a limited amount, which could potentially come from an employee mindset, from when you've had a job in the past, for business owners who've been employees. Some have, some haven't. Where they get to the end of the month, they get money, and then the next month it goes. But once it's gone, it's gone. They have to wait till the end of the month to get some more. So everything becomes a cost in that respect, because you see money is a very finite thing, whereas it's actually something that flows.
In and out as well.
Yes.
Just as quickly as it can come in, just as quickly as it can go out. And it's managing that cycle. How quickly are you getting money in to replace the money that's going out? Realistically, you should have money in your bank before it should go out. But most people, in most cases, are having a lot of money go out of their bank account before they've even recovered any cash. And a lot of this is like project based. For example, you can spend 6 weeks doing a project, and it might mean you need to be in the office with them delivering that project, for example. So you've got expenses that you're accruing, and they're not paying you until right at the end of the project. And they might even query some of it, so there's no guaranteed payment. But most people have 30-day payment terms as well. So even when you've invoiced it 6 weeks later, you're still waiting another 4 weeks before you get paid. So you're waiting even longer for that money to come in. So it's about nailing your payment terms, knowing exactly when you want to be paid, setting your own boundaries, so you know what your contract terms are and you stick to them, but also being very secure in what you are pricing. And it comes from a mindset factor too, where a lot of people, self-employed freelancers in particular, that I've noticed, still move in that employed like mindset where they are literally exchanging time for money.
Yes.
And you can't scale a business
through
exchange of time for money. And sitting around like that £25 to £30 mark, well, that's great in the face of it. You're thinking you've earned more money per hour than what you ever have done before on a £15 an hour wage you was in employment. But what business owners don't take into consideration is what's the gross profit that comes out of that cost, what's the overheads that have to come out of that, what's the tax that I've got to pay out of that. Before you know it, you're actually working at a £17 an hour rate, and you're not actually much better off compared to what you were when you were employed, and you're having to work a lot harder for it. So it's about management and really drilling into where your numbers are and where you want to get to.
I've seen examples of businesses who self-employed businesses where they are working all the hours, literally all the hours, but not taking into account a salary for themselves. So they're essentially just counting all the money that comes in through sales, but they're actually working 14 hours a day and not paying themselves for that time. So when you look at the hourly rate, it's probably actually negative at that point, less than minimum wage.
Exactly. And a lot of business owners are in this boat as well. And what I've noticed in particular is profit and cash flow get very confused. And people, produce your end of year accounts and you look at your bottom line and you've got £5,000 profit, but you look in your bank account and you've got £1,000 and you're like, well, where's all my profit? You've spent it. You've simply spent it. And there was a staggering figure that I come across, and it was 53% of businesses at the end of 2022 were borrowing more cash than before the pandemic. And out of that figure, 64% of them said that was related to cash flow issues. And you can see that you come out of COVID, you've had to still pay for stuff, and you're going to have to replace that money. But to know that we're borrowing so much in order to just keep business going and that flow, because your profit doesn't reflect everything that goes out, because you have the other side of the statements, which shows your balance sheet, which is your assets and your liabilities. So if you're paying back a loan that you've had to take out for cash flow and you're still paying £500 back to that loan, let's say a month, well, that's going out of your bank and that's not showing on your profit and loss. You've got a director's loan because you're having to keep on putting money into the business to keep it going. So you're paying your business to run, but the business isn't paying you to do the job. It's backwards. And a lot of business owners get that wrong because they neglect their finances very early on. They're too scared to look at the bank. They're too scared to get an accountant, or they just want the accountant to just tell them how much tax they need to pay, and that's it, and think that's all that they can do. Whereas there's other accountants out there like myself, like so many people that I know within the community and the industry, that are really proactive and want to actually help you on that journey to becoming very successful. So you are cash rich, so you have got high profits, so you can take the extra dividends out and still be able to afford it within your cash flow. There's
so much when this comes back to pricing for project, for example. You've got to keep in mind that you've got an office, you occupy an office, for example. So there's also office rental that needs to be taken into account. So you're going to occupy a space while you're carrying out that project. It's not literally just the work that you're going to do, it's everything around that. What else do you need? You need hardware, you need a computer, there's wear and tear on that if you're doing
depreciation.
Exactly. There's the furniture that you've had to put into your office. There's like all the software that you might need to be able to perform your job. There's so many other things that go into account. There's and the amount of time that you can actually spend working on a project at any one given day while still building your business at the same time. Because that's another thing, isn't it? The kind of, the feast and famine cycles of a business where they're not flowing in that respect, because it's like, okay, I'm going to put everything I've got into this one project because it's going to pay really well. But then you're not spending time on working on the business and looking for your next client after this project finishes. So then, it's feast famine, it's just a constant cycle of that, and that's really difficult to manage, isn't it?
It is, and especially when you are a solo entrepreneur and you are just yourself, and especially in the early stages, I think when you're building your brand and your reputation and you're finding your flow, knowing what works for you, because it is very big change to being managed to managing yourself, and understanding that, and then going. It's not easy always to find clients when you first start off, and that feast and famine does come in a lot. But it's managing, okay, well, do I have an emergency fund if I do not have clients for the next 6 months? Can I afford to pay everything that's going out of my business?
Yeah.
And it's so important, and something that's very, very overlooked. I recommend to my clients to have a bank account that has the pots.
Yes.
Like Monzo and Metal.
Yeah, Metal is brilliant for that.
Yeah, Metal's amazing. I use it myself. I recommend it to all of my clients because you get free agent for free with it as well. But having the pots and putting 15% aside for your tax, putting 15% aside for your VAT if you're VAT registered as well.
Yeah.
And actually putting money aside to pay yourself as well, which is so important. If you put it aside, it's there. You're not touching it.
Yeah.
It's little things like money management, but it's the mindset you need in order, and the tools and the knowledge that come with it in order to manage that correctly. So you are flowing, and if you're not paying yourself, you're going to start resenting what you're doing, and then your flow obviously goes out of balance because you're not getting what you want. You're not enjoying home life because you're working all the time. You're probably not spending time with your family. You're not really going out much. You're not enjoying what life should be like because you're constantly in front of a screen or doing work or doing something business related.
Yeah.
Having that emergency fund gives you that breathing space and that buffer for you to be able to fall back on it if something does change within your business. So it's not constant feast or famine.
Yeah, exactly. I think I've heard it recommended that you should have 3 months worth of expenses covered.
3 to 6 is a typical. I always say 6 because it takes longer to build up that pot of 6.
Yeah.
But you've got a lot more to play with once you've got that 6. It's just what I prefer.
No, I mean, the longer the better, but it's getting there, isn't it? Being structured around it. So how would you recommend kind of, that embedded fear that people have about even looking at their finances? How would you recommend dealing with that and finding ways to look at money and as something that is an asset, something that can work for you, rather than something to be scared of?
I definitely don't think it's something you can do just by yourself. I think having an accountant that actually works with you on that. I definitely think understanding what's going on in your business, or actually doing it. So what I always say to my clients is scheduling time in your diary to do it, even if it's starting off at once a month. Because once a month, at least you're diarising it. You've got it in, have it on the same day, the same time every single month. So you can't neglect it. So always say the first week of the month so you can go back and reflect on your previous month. But have it diarised so you can go in and spend time, but have an accountant working with you. What I do with my clients, especially the ones that I do identify in that scarcity mindset, a bit unsure, a bit of a money mindset issue, is I get them to do the bookkeeping themselves and I check it. So they're getting to know their numbers. They're understanding what's going in their business every single month, because they're having to log on to their software. They're having to go in and reconcile their bank account. So they're seeing the balance in their bank, even if they're not logging onto their bank account daily. They've seen how much they've brought in. They've seen how much that goes out. All the software now produce cash flow forecasts, so you can go in, have a look. It's on the dashboard. It's in free agents, bright green and bright red. You can literally see the money, and it tells you the balance. So embedding a routine into them so they can confidently start going on every single month. And as you do it more often, the more confident you're going to become in knowing where things are going. But then having somebody to fall back on to give you that empowerment that you know you're doing the right thing.
Yeah.
It's just about taking that first step. And I think spreadsheets can be a little daunting because it can be a little bit all over the place. I think having a software where it's in, and you can just log in, have a quick look, sort out what you need to sort out, and even knowing it once a month is better than not knowing it at all. Because at least you know what's going on 12 times a year rather than having no clue what's going on 0 times of the year. That's what I'd recommend as a first step to start moving you in the right direction.
Yeah, I know this might sound like an ad for a free agent, but
it's not.
It's so easy. No, because I use it as well, and it's so easy to see everything there. It's just all there in front of you, isn't it? And you can consolidate everything with your bank. You can send out your invoices, estimates, and all sorts. And it's been an absolute lifesaver for me. And you know, every professional business should have something in place like that, just to keep an eye on things. And with time, that fear does disappear, and people become more confident, because we're not taught this at school, are we?
No,
I mean, this is
we're really not. No, and it's so poor that we're not, because that's a different topic for a different day, I think. But that's a topic all within
let's get into that.
Yeah, it's honestly, it really frustrates me. Like I said, I learned quite well from my father, because my father was a head chef, and he had to manage all the wages and do all the stock counts and loads of spreadsheets. So when he'd work on the computer back at home, I would see what he was doing. I just took an interest, and he just taught me. That's how I learned and got into the profession that I am in now. That's where my love for it stemmed from. But there's so many people that don't have that because their parents don't understand.
Exactly.
And their parents above them. It's a generational thing, because nobody was ever taught it. So it's so crucial for us now to support that and teach it. That's the reason why I like to educate the clients, because they, as I said, they're not the expert in accounting, they're not the expert in finances, they're expert in their field, but educating them, it breaks down that barrier. But it's so important to start teaching it in schools. So important.
Oh, I know. And you know, I talk to my kids about it, about having that mindset, because I see, like, my youngest, like, he's 11. I give him a tenner, and he's like, okay, I'm gonna get a game with this. I'm like, stop. Why not spend half of it, and like the rest of it, why don't you think about other ways that you can put it away somewhere, or just save it until next week, because you might want a different game next week. And then what are you going to do? And as far as he's concerned, he's going to come knocking on my door again. But that's the point. That's the point where I'm not answering the door anymore.
Yeah, definitely. But I think as adults, I mean, I don't have any children right now, but I'm guessing there's going to be many parents that are tuning into this. If the schools aren't teaching it, who does it then fall onto? And it then falls onto the parent. So the parent needs to be educated and have at least a basic line understanding to be able to teach their children. Otherwise, they're just going to fall into the same trap. And there's so many things out there now that can help children. You've got the debit cards that you can use for them and cap how much they can spend. So you are actually parents in control, but at least then the child has that understanding of what money feels like, what it feels like when they spend money. Do they feel scared? Do they feel happy? Is it a big purchase they're going to get? Are they saving? Setting up a savings account for them and having that money there, so they're aware of it, and they can either build that into their plan when they're growing up of what they want to do with that money. It's so important for us to know, so we can pass that on to the generations below us. Otherwise, it's just going to be a vicious circle that keeps them going round.
Yeah, and the earlier they start, the better, because it's a habit, isn't it? It's a muscle that has to be flexed, and it's a habit.
I remember my grandma would take us clothes shopping like for Christmas, and she'd take me and my brother and my sister, and she'd give us all £100 each. I remember being in like Asda or Matalan or something like that. She's like, right, you've all got £100 and you can all spend it on whatever clothes you like, but you can either go for the really expensive things that you like and get 2, 3, 4 things. Obviously, we're going back years ago now. Children's clothes aren't going to be 20 quid, but they are now.
Yeah.
Or you can go to the sales rack, have a look through the sales rack, see what bargains you can get, and just use your money a little bit more wisely. But it was our decision what we could go and spend it on, and she weren't saying us no, we can't do that. And if we ended up coming, I used to come back with like 10 different things, but my sister would come back with like 3, and she'd be annoyed that I had more. But it's because I looked at where my money was, and we'd add it up, and we'd go and we'd pay at the counter, and it would just put us in that driver's seat where we could be in charge of what we wanted to do as children. It definitely helped. So little things like that do make all the difference.
It's empowering, isn't it? You know, I remember like going on holiday with my brother when we were younger. Like we would be given pocket money at the start of the holiday, and I still had mine at the end of the holiday, and he spent his on the first day in the arcade. So that was our
boys and their games.
Yeah, exactly. It's still the same. That was how we worked. But again, you know, my mindset was not good, but neither was his, because he didn't understand the value of it. It just went straight through his fingers.
Yeah.
And I was too scared to spend it.
Yeah.
For whatever reason was embedded in me at that time. Like, maybe I need to go and do some work around that.
Nobody's perfect, and there's definitely moments where you go, oh God, should I have spent that much on that? But it is what it is at the end of the day. It's just what can you do next in order to make it better?
I think it's the understanding that, okay, I've spent that. It's perhaps a little bit more than I would have liked to have spent, but there's always more.
Yeah, exactly. There's an abundance of cash out there.
Yeah, there is. I mean, yeah, you just need to look at, you know, some prices for certain things. There's a market for absolutely everything, and that doesn't say that one thing is better than another. It's just like the right thing for the right person, and connecting the two together and making sure the right people get the things that they actually need.
Exactly.
And people aren't spending too much on something that they don't need, really.
Yeah.
But that comes with the brand.
Exactly. All is a big spider web. It all comes in together.
Oh, it does, yeah. Nic, I've loved this conversation. It's been so good. And as you say, I think we've got a lot more to discuss, especially around the education. I can hear it, like I can feel a podcast on its own just coming from that.
Yeah, why not?
Or even like a little course or something like that. Oh, and a whole brand around it, educating children about money. I'd love to see some examples of that. It's been great. What's your advice for anybody who, whether it's money related or not, is out of flow in their life, and what they can do to get themselves back into flow?
Pause. Just pause. Look around, look within, then make a plan. Because,
I love that.
Yeah, just pause. Stop for a second. Because it can get very hectic when you've got things buzzing all around. Just pause.
Yeah, so simple. But how many times do we do it?
Exactly.
I know.
Yeah, just as I said at the start of the call, just sit with it. Just sit with it. Just pause. And that reflection's so important.
I feel like it's gone a little bit quiet in here now, just after you said that, you know, just to really drop that in.
Yeah. I definitely feel like that's all right. But honestly, Adele, thank you so much for having me. I've absolutely loved this chat. It's been amazing.
It has. It's been brilliant. And we'll drop the link to where people can find Nic in the comments afterwards. I know she's got a new website that is being launched at the moment. So we'll drop details of that so anyone can go and find you. And thank you once again. It's been absolutely wonderful, this conversation. I've learned so much. And I think we'll be back and doing it again soon.
Yeah, I'd love to be on again. Thank you, Adele.